Dear writer, you need to quit. This is the show that helps you know what to quit, what to keep, and what to question. My name is Becca Syme, and I'm a Gallup certified strengths coach with thousands of hours of coaching 6- and 7-figure authors, mid-listers, major award winners, and new authors alike, because everyone needs to quit something. Anyone can tell you what worked for them, and of course they say it might not work for you, but they can't tell you why. Well, I can tell you why. Welcome to the QuitCast. Hi, and welcome to episode 17 of the QuitCast. Today we are going to be talking about strengths for writers, but instead of doing a specific strength theme, today we're going to talk about an element of strength theory, one that's been coming up a lot lately as we're getting deeper and deeper into what it means to have a strengths for writers program. And a strengths for writers program is basically a success alignment and success training program for writers to be able to stand out or to get better faster at where they are already excellent in writing. And part of why we want to do this is because standing out is super important in a crowded marketplace. And if you've ever read books like First Break All the Rules or Now Discover Your Strengths, Strengths Finder 2.0, all books by Gallup. If you've ever read the book Purple Cow or The Dip by Seth Godin, that's sort of where we're coming from as far as the theory or the interpretation of why it's important for writers to focus on their strengths. So today we're going to be talking about a very specific element of strength theory, which is when I want to develop a strength, why is it important for me to use words like balcony and basement or raw and mature when talking about these particular themes? And so one of the questions that's been coming up a lot lately on the questions in the podcast is, I don't have this strength, but I want to get better at this area. And of course, you know me, I'm always saying, first of all, you don't have to have a strength to get better at a certain behavior. And you don't have to develop a low strength. Like that is the opposite of what we're talking about when it comes to strengths development. We don't want you to be focusing in where you have a lack of strength, because that is a development area that I don't like dealing with. It's a recipe for frustration, right? Applying a ton of effort to get only a little bit better. Whereas when you apply effort in a strength area, you can get exponentially better with the same amount of effort. And of course, everyone's pushback is, but I do need to get better at executing, or I need to get better at thinking, or I need to get better at relating. So there are absolutely ways to get what you want out of that development process, but it's not by focusing on developing a strength that you have low. It's almost always in pairing off what we call the basements of your higher strengths. So we're going to talk about a specific example today that has come up at least twice in the comments in the podcast. And we're also going to talk about another example that comes up often in class. And so to do this, at first, I'm going to hand it over to Terry and Becca to talk about the theory of strength balconies and strength basements, or as it's also being called with Gallup now, raw and mature talents. And then we're going to talk about the specific examples that I'm talking about. So again, this is a quick reminder. If you comment on the podcast, we may have to address your comments in the podcast so that I can give you a little bit longer of an explanation. So your comments are never wasted. So anyway, right now we're going to move on to the Terry and Becca part. So let's do that and take it away, Terry and Becca. So there was somebody who had been watching the Activator podcast. And one of the questions came up in the comments was, I have very low activator and I want to become active, like more active. How do I develop a number 28 activator? And I was like, I mean, you don't. Like, that's not the point of strength. But, and you've talked about this before, right? Of like, the behaviors can come from other places.
Right. That's what I was just going to say. What other behavior acts like activator, and see if you're higher and hope for the best. If not, You can become an activator for a bit. You can always hold your breath, right? But you're never going to be, you can take it from what, a 28 to a 26.
Yeah, like you can become slightly better.
So what else presents like activator?
So achiever, I mean, any of the influencing or executing strengths have the possibility, and really even relationship building, have the possibility of developing more active behaviors or acting closer. But I have a feeling that what's happening, so when we think about strengths, it's the talent itself is value neutral. It's not acting positively or negatively, but it has the capacity to act negatively and positively, or maturely and in a raw way. So if you have, for instance, an intellection strength, like one of your basement behaviors of intellection might be not taking action on thoughts, because you
Right.
continue to circle and circle and circle.
Yep.
So
Getting it on.
as
Yep. In a
as
loop.
opposed to, let's bring up a number 28 activator. My question is, do you have a high intellection? Do you have a high deliberative? Do you have a high strategic? Are you circling in your thoughts? Because all of those are basement behaviors of those high strengths. It's the I think we talked about this once before, where if you have nuclear power, the nuclear power itself is value neutral. It can either be a bomb, which would destroy things, or it can be a nuclear power plant, which powers an entire valley, right? So you want to bring it up out of the bomb area and bring it into the power plant area where it's giving.
So you're saying rather than try to take a 28 and raise it up, look at your top 10 and make sure you're not in the basements.
Yeah.
You're more apt to get out. If you get out of the basements in all of your things, then then see where you're at is a better way to do things than to try to be something that you're not. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
I like it. That's a great point, because you're right. Like if you're a relator, then you can get motivated by getting out of your basement and saying to a friend, hey, make me accountable. I want you to help me. I want to get 3 or 4 friends together and say, let's start a little accountability thread or do this. I know someone that's like that. He has had issues. Yep. And so rather than become an achiever, he said to 5 or 6 people, let's all be accountable. And by being accountable every day, he then was an achiever. So I'm saying.
Yep.
I like it. It's almost like you have a knack for this.
I know, you would think that I was a pro at this or something. But the key for me about the basement behaviors is that it's not actually the lack of activator that's making them not act.
Right.
It's basement of a strength that has so much potential, but we're not developing it into a mature talent. We're not developing it and putting it up at the balcony. Instead, we're being ruled by these basement behaviors. And that's what is so hard for people to understand about strengths, is they look at the numbers and where's the first place that everybody goes when they get their full 34? They look at the bottom, right? They want to know, like,
really? What
do I not have? And I'm like, people,
what? I didn't look at that at all.
This is the opposite.
Top one, baby.
Yeah, it's like, what's your superpower? What are you the absolute best at?
That's
but then
interesting.
Again, like a superpower, like you watch superheroes, right? All superheroes have weaknesses, but what are superheroes' weaknesses, right? It's the excess of their power, or the not understanding that there's limitations of their power, or the flip side of their power. Like that's.
And here's the other thing about being in the basement. When you are in the basement, you don't know you are.
Yes. You really need to forget about the lower ones at all in a development sense, right? Like it's always important to have awareness about what's down there, so you don't expect those things from yourself, but you don't need to develop your low strengths. Like the whole concept is exponential growth in your top strengths, but then sometimes what that looks like is targeted development of your basement areas to bring up those places where you're having a difficult time controlling the muscle that has so much power.
So you're saying for the average person, keep focusing on those top 5, 10 or 5?
I
top
would say
five.
focus on your top 5 because those are where the basements are going to be the biggest deal. So like for you, this is one that comes up a lot with high ideation people. And this comes up with you. We've talked about this on the ideation podcast.
No, never comes up with me, but go ahead.
Like you have a freaking superpower ideation. It is so huge that sometimes I can see, even just in the length of a sentence, your eyes will bounce off and you'll start having ideas like every sentence,
Oh yeah.
right? Like it's
Yeah.
it happens a million times a day for you. And those are all idea sparks. And then you have to decide, is that worth hanging on to and all that stuff? Like you have to rubric yourself into that constantly. So like the basement of ideation is being so unfocused because you're having so many ideas all the time. Well, you came up with this great system for how to sort of sort your ideas into whether they're worth keeping or not. And you have a whole process that you go through internally where you have developed your ideation. That's one of the reasons that your ideation is so freaking strong, is because you have gotten rid of that basement so much that now you're starting to bring it up to where it's acting more in a balcony. And then when it does act in a basement, it's like momentary, right? Like it's a blip. And then it's like, okay, never mind. I've got this way of handling this. And you move back up into that.
Sometimes at first you start to get, when I go to the basement, I start to get afraid that I'm not going to have them, or that I'm going to forget them, or that they're going to go away, and then I'm not going to get as many. So then I just have to tell myself, they're just going to keep coming, dude. Just don't worry about them. So the best time when I get focused is when I stop looking at them. It's an attention thing for me for that. So yeah, for whatever that is, people need to work on the strengths for sure.
On their basements, yeah. When you see success from the balcony, you'll be more motivated to live up there, right? Like it still is going to take intellection people longer than it takes other people to write books because they need to think more about the book and they need to cook more. And that's just the way that they're probably not going to write every day. That is okay.
Yeah,
they don't
do
what everybody else
fine.
does, right? It's like part of the reason I wanted to talk about the balconies and basements today is also because another common issue that I see is when someone really wants a strength that they have in like their, let's say 15 to 25 area to get higher, but then they ignore the fact that they have the potential for the same kind of behaviors in their higher strength. So like I see it a lot with ideation, where they have like a number 18 or 22 ideation, but they have a number 2 strategic. It's like you can get the exact same thing out of talking to somebody who has very high ideation, and then iterating your way around whatever ideas they gave you and coming up with all these different paths to get where you need to go. And all you need is to talk to another person. And this is the other piece, is like sometimes it's more helpful for me, and I have a number 6 or 7 or 8 ideation. It's more helpful for me to talk to you and have you spew ideas at me than it is for me to try to generate my own ideas, because I need an idea in that moment. And I know if I give you a concept, you're going to give me 100 ideas, right? So sometimes it's more helpful for me to use your strength that is a superpower than it is for me to try to force my ideation into submission, which it just is not something.
That's a great point. I mean, we were talking about that the other day when I had sent a friend to you, and you said they were awesome at this, and this. They were really amazing, but they lacked the ideas. So really, you said the smart thing for them to do was get a bunch of ideas from me and then just go do their thing and succeed.
Yeah, and they were awesome at executing, like so good at executing.
And so using what you just said, if you really want to be an achiever, then find an achiever and spend 20 minutes with them, and they'll help you get on, because they have programs and things as well. But you're totally right. This is a great point, and it is, you're right. And I was smiling earlier because I was thinking, well, that's what you have to do when you're coaching them, but that's what this purpose of this video is to do, is to coach them. So you're right. Spend the time on your top 5 and get them as awesome as they can be. And we've talked about this before as well, that no matter how good you are at your top 5, they can get better and better and better and better forever and ever. And so, and that's the better, faster thing, right? Don't And I guess that's a great reason why the average person shouldn't get to 34, and why the program just gives you the top 5, because it helps you focus, put the blinders on.
Yeah, at least at the beginning, to focus on what you're really, really good at, because that's also likely where your biggest weaknesses are. And so work
and
on
your
those
greatest
first.
potential to make change, right? Your greatest potential to make change.
Yep. And frankly,
I mean, I have
your superpowers, like my input superpower is legitimately out of control. Your ideation superpower is legitimately out of control. It would be stupid for me to try to do ideation on my own if I can't come up with the ideas in the moment, instead of just calling you, right? Like, it would just be a waste of my time. And I feel like we don't do this enough, is we don't reach out to other people who have these superpowers, and we think like, I should do it all myself. Why?
Right, and you're not imposing on people, because people that have it as a 1 love to do it. Like for you're not bugging me for 2 seconds when you ask me for ideas, because I can't. I mean, it's a nice break for me to give ideas to you for a while, rather than give them to strangers on the street, because I just randomly approach them. But no, that's a good point. And you have that going, right? You have that group of people that all can share their strengths and stuff as well, and tap into that as well.
Yeah, right? And I always encourage writers to know what the strengths are of the people who are around you. Like, give them the test, have people take the test. It's super easy and fast. Like, and it's so accurate. And it's like, just find out what other people are. Like, I have a girl in my, I have a small group that I talk to regularly of just 4 people. And she's the number 1 focus. And focus is a very big challenge for me. And I'll tell you, all it takes me is about 3 seconds of talking to her. And all of a sudden I'm like, yeah, you're right. That's what I need to do. I need to stop doing all this, and I need to do that. You're right. Like,
That's That's what I was saying, where if you want to be an achiever, talk to an achiever and they'll help you achieve. Yeah.
So just underline this one more time. The super important part about focusing on your top 5, or maybe your top 10 if you've already gone through some of the strengths for writers classes, but in focusing in your top strengths, is that that's often where our weaknesses are as well. If I have a high intellection, I may have a hard time acting on my thoughts. And so we want to pair off the basement of that intellection instead of trying to bring up a very low activator. If I have a very high empathy, I may want to limit the exposure that I have to other people's emotions that are derailing me, instead of trying to bring up a relator or a woo strength that's low for me. And so again, it's your biggest potential is in your areas of strength. And we just want to hit that one more time. The whole point of learning about these strengths is not to say, let me bring up things that I have low. It's to say, let me really pare down and develop my focus onto the things where I'm really strong, so that I can just take off like a rocket ship. And so thank you again for joining us today. We had a great live Q&A session. If you join the Addicts level on the Patreon page, we do live Q&A sessions for coaching every month. And that link is in the show notes. And I want to encourage you to comment if you have questions. Please like and share. Please come back next week when we do another Strengths for Writers. We're going to do a theme next week. And so please join us in episode 18. And I will see you on the next podcast.